Hi, this is Jeff Flowett, technical agronomist with Cooperative Farmers Elevator, and on this week's Field Friday segment, kind of wanted to, revisit something we talked about earlier this year, especially when it comes to the corn. But if you remember a number of episodes back, we talked about the soil mineralization levels. There's a model that Iowa State has that'll give us an indicator of what we have for mineralization, the organic matter breakdown, and nutrients that the soil can supply to the crop itself, and how we were pretty good early, and then we just did a nosedive for a while when we got really dry, and that was when I think our roots at that time were going deeper because it was dry, which is a good thing. But then we got, the area got a nice, probably our last soaking rain and probably our only really good one of the year around the 1st of July. About that time, you could really see our mineralization levels kind of really skyrocket and get back up to above average by a ways, and that was a good thing. We had some soil breaking down and some nutrients that were being broken down and into the solution so the roots could get a hold of it. Since then, of course, we know what we've had for rain since that 1st of July time frame. We've had very little in a lot of the area, and you could see our mineralization started to drop like a stone again, and that's a good indication of what we have for soil moisture. If the mineralization is dropping like that, it's an indication that our soils were getting quite dry. Now you can kind of see late here in the season what our ramifications of that are. We were not able to extract nutrients again. We still had a lot of nutrient needs that were really ramping up as these ears were starting to develop, pollination, early grain fill, and then the grain fill period. And you can kind of see, maybe from here what that's done to the lower part of our canopy. We've probably been able to find that in a lot of our own fields. This corn here is about a half milk line. That's fairly representative of the area. There's maybe a little bit that's not that far and maybe a little bit that's beyond that, but that's kind of a good middle of the road. But these ears, as that's trying to fill that grain, consume a lot of nutrients to fill that grain, especially the nitrogen, sulfur, and phosphorus. Grain actually is a really high phosphorus sink, so those grain kernels and the bean pods, for that matter, they require a lot of phosphorus, and it kind of struggles to fill those kernels as well if it has a struggle to get a hold of that, and we can kind of see that. We see a lot of tip back here. There's fields, of course, that are worse than this. And these ears aren't overly big. They're all right, but I just think that's, some of the things that our crop has struggled with. The only thing that plant can do is take up nutrients into these plants all season. When it runs out at the end, that's what you see here, is we see that grain still is going to try and fill. So the only place to take it out, if the roots are in such dry soil like they are, we're going to cannibalize that stalk. And I was worried about that after we lost that rain pattern, where now every time we're supposed to get a rain, we've been missing it mostly. If you were fortunate enough to be in one of those little bands that caught an inch of rain a time or two, you probably have a little bit better looking crop. But we've really struggled here in lots of the area, and I think you're going to see it in the yields. My fear is that our stock quality is going to go fairly quickly as well. We're going to cannibalize that stock nutrients, and those stocks could have an issue with standability later. You can go out in the fields and see these brown leaves on the bottom. The higher they are in the plant, the worse it will be. That's telling you how much it's pulled out of that plant already. Here's a picture of a leaf that shows what that nitrogen deficiency symptoms look like. We've talked about that many times in the past, but that inverse V pattern, where it's the older leaves start sucking out nutrients into the plant and then it works its way up the plant. It's always more of a problem when we get into those situations where it's up to the ear leaf, and some of these fields we're getting there. But again, we're at the mercy of Mother Nature here. I think our roots went down really deep in that earlier period when we were drying out in June. I think that's the only reason we have as good a crop as we do, because moisture wise we haven't really had enough to really facilitate the crop even as big as we have here now. So I think, we've all seen the market start to rise here as some of the pro farmer estimates are showing maybe the crop isn't as good. Some places it's because it's too wet, believe it or not. But I think we have some concerns going forward on how long it's going to stand out here. So kind of every year we talk about watch stock standability, and this year's no different. But that's just something to be aware of, and I would take a look at your fields. As I look around the countryside as I'm driving around now, I start to see some of those knolls and some of the lesser soils. They look fine one day, and 3 days later you drive by and the whole hillside started to turn brown. I think you're cannibalizing everything out of that whole plant top to bottom. And what you're going to start to see there is those plants are going to be dead here, and they're going to be dead before we get to the 1st of September in some cases. That's telling me how close we are to the end as far as these plants being able to hang on, even on the good ground. I'm fearful that they're going to not hang on enough and finish correctly. So just wanted to make you aware of that, what I'm seeing as I drive around, what I'm getting calls on. Why is this corn kind of turning brown and going at the end? I mean, most people kind of know, but just wanted to explain that a little bit because our nutrient needs are pretty high in that grain fill timing, and we just haven't had enough moisture for the roots to do it for us. So, but just wanted to make you aware of where we're at and kind of a status on the corn and just some watch outs at this point. So with that, that's this week's Field Friday segment, and we'll see you next week.